Welcome to A.U.M. We are live, and I'm your host, Callie Fedosinko of Callie Collective, a digital marketing agency designed to build relationships between financial advisors and their target audience through data-driven content, websites, and advertising. Our episode today is brought to you by the Financial Planning Association, otherwise known as the FPA. The FPA is a great resource center providing education, support, and networking opportunities for financial advisors like you. And for instance, they're hosting a retreat next week that I will be at. If you also will be there, make sure to look for me. And if you're not going to be there, make sure you sign up for next year. AI is taking over, and it feels like a race to implement before you get left behind. But what kind of liability are you opening yourself up to by using artificial intelligence? We're talking with attorney Andrew Shedlock of QTAC Rock LLP to find out how to protect yourself when using AI. Welcome, Andrew.
Good afternoon, Callie. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to learn what I should and shouldn't do.
Well, let's see if we can dive into that today. I really
Right?
thank you for the opportunity to be here today and talk about AI and the interesting things that we can do with this tool and how to avoid the pitfalls.
Yes. So, Andrew, you're a defense attorney for advisors and broker dealers. What kind of lawsuits have you seen since the introduction and rise of AI?
Sure. Well, thanks, Callie. As you mentioned, I am a litigator. I'm an attorney for financial advisors and investment advisors, and we have a nationwide practice defending planners and advisors. So we deal with a lot of customer claims and a lot of fiduciary duty claims and things like that. In terms of today's topic, in terms of the use of artificial intelligence, there hasn't been much action yet. However, the SEC in March of 2024, so just last month,
Okay.
funny to think that April's almost over,
Yeah.
actually dinged and brought up several civil penalties against two investment advisors for pretty specific uses of AI. And this is a pretty straightforward case. As advisors know, I mean, when you say you're going to do something, when you tell your clients you use a certain process, you actually have to do that. You can't, what's that word? You can't lie to your clients. So the SEC actually found that two different advisors had said, well, we use AI to, time the market, or we use AI to, compile our clients' data and figure out the best possible strategies for you to invest in the market. And it turned out, with little investigation, the SEC determined that wasn't true. They actually weren't using artificial intelligence in the way that they said they were with their clients. I mean, this is a bread and butter SEC case. And we can learn a little bit from it because, hey, if you say you're going to use AI to improve performance and you're actually not doing so, well, that's a big flag. But as we know, the SEC gets to pick and choose the cases it wants, pick and choose the orders it brings. So we don't know how far this will go. But I think what we can learn from this SEC litigation is this simple fact that if you tell your clients you're going to use technology in a certain way, well, you better use that technology in a certain way.
Yeah.
So an extreme example, say I were to say, I'm going to use ChatGPT or whatever artificial intelligence platform there is, and use it to do X for my clients. I'm going to use it to, discover new market trends or discover new trends about a technology sector. Well, you better do that. You better explain to your clients how you do that. And if you stop doing that, you better update your ADV or your pertinent forms to make sure that your clients understand what you're actually doing now. Because otherwise, you just become a sitting duck for the SEC, for other regulators who will be all over this in time. So
this
the
is
SEC's
super
first foray.
Interesting because it's kind of opposite of what I was expecting of, they were using it and they shouldn't have. But it was more of they said they were using it and they weren't.
Exactly. And I think, to your point, I think the next kind of wave of regulatory enforcement and issues will be, we went through the whole robo-advisor trend over the last decade or so, the betterments, things like that. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think the theme that we're seeing in articles and think pieces is that, hey, AI, ChatGPT will never replace financial advisors' fiduciary duties.
Mm-hmm.
You can't plug a client's A.U.M. Income goals into ChatGPT or other AI model and spit it back to them and say, here's what you should do.
Yeah. Yeah. So around using AI, can advisors use it like ChatGPT? That's the one that I think everybody's most familiar with. Can they use ChatGPT without opening themselves up to liability?
Yes, yes, advisors can. And I think there's kind of a couple ways they can use it. I'll talk about two ways they can use it
Yeah.
fairly safely and one way they can't. So,
Yeah.
first and foremost, it's client communication. Um,
Mm.
the basic thing of how do I write an email to a client?
Mm-hmm.
I know we write emails all the time. Sometimes our financial planning clients require more detail. Yes, as an advisor, you can sit down with ChatGPT, say what you want to say to a client, and you get something back from ChatGPT. Does
Mm-hmm.
that mean you just copy paste and send that email to the client? Absolutely not. You need to understand what you're saying, and
Yeah.
we'll be down this road. I promise you, there will be
Yeah.
actions where advisors just plug something into ChatGPT and send it off. But no, you can shorten your email communication cycle to your clients by using ChatGPT, by editing what ChatGPT and other AI models do, and
Mm.
sending it off to your clients. It's a
Mm-hmm.
time save tool there.
Yeah.
Now, that does not replace your fiduciary duty, um,
Mm.
you know, requirements and responsibilities in any way, shape, or form. It's
Right.
more simple communications.
Yeah.
Another way, and David Ortiz, a planner in Southern Florida, does this, but he uses ChatGPT and other AI models for the client meetings and client development tools. So,
Mm.
the four-stage process.
Mm-hmm.
Client comes in, we have the initial meeting, we dive in deeper. He uses that and has written about how we can use that for prompts for further questions.
Mm-hmm.
Couple comes in, I have $1 million in assets. Here's what I want to do, Social Security. Okay, well, ChatGPT can help you with prompts to lead you down that path.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Now, where do advisors need to be careful in that area? Well, first of all, inputting any sort of protected, confidential client information or
Mm-hmm.
data into ChatGPT should be strongly warned against
Mm-hmm.
because ChatGPT is a public model. It's not private. So
Right.
in theory, anyone can access your client's information. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
no names, no identified information, things like that. And then
Yeah.
second,
Go
yeah.
ahead.
And then I was just going to say, we talked about how we can use this. You need to check with your firm. And if your firm
Mm.
doesn't have guidelines around use of AI or
Mhm.
technology in general, your firm needs to have that. And I doubt
Mm.
it would be a hard no, but I do think it would be a yes, but
Mm.
in terms of compliance manuals, in terms of procedures, policies,
Mhm.
and procedures. Because if you're doing something or using some sort of technology your firm doesn't approve of, that's not only an SEC issue, that's an issue your firm would take
Right.
issue with too.
Yeah. What about note taking? I mean, that's a huge one when I go into Zoom meetings and it pops up, so and so's note taker is here. Um, what about meetings with clients? Because they're going to give you their personal information. I would assume that you should be wary of this.
Yeah, I would be wary of that because yes, chat GPT and generative note-taking actions can
Hmm.
really cut down on your time spent recording those meetings from transcribing a video or transcribing a phone call by quite a significant amount of time. That being said, if they're divulging personal information, their names, specific information that could be harmful if released to the public, I'd be really careful there.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
Because again, ChatGPT is a large language model. It's
Yeah.
public. It's open source, so it can be used there. But again, that's something that you need to vet with your firm.
So ChatGPT is public. Are there private models, and would those be okay to have personal client information in?
I'm sure there are private models out there that are not open source but are closed source. I'm not familiar with any in the
Sure.
mainstream right now, but like any technology, things will proliferate quickly over time.
Mhm.
And I think that kind of leads into the next thing to
Yeah.
discuss is regardless of what you use and how an advisor uses it, advisors need to understand why they are using it, and how it works.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take like cash planning software, e-money, a
Mm-hmm.
very simple, basic thing that many advisors use.
Yeah.
Before advisors use that, advisors and their firm have a basic understanding of how e-money works.
Mm-hmm.
You input a goal, you input cash flow, whatever you input, you understand how the process works, what it spits out, how projections are made, how a Monte Carlo projection is made, things like that.
Yeah.
We can't say the same right now for ChatGPT. I
Mm-hmm.
put in a couple paragraphs about my client. I say X, Y, and Z, income, assets, risk, retirement, social security, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I can't go back and check ChatGPT's work. I
Mm-hmm.
can't figure out and say like, okay, I know it's supposed to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with e-money or other things, I can. But
Right.
ChatGPT is a a conglomerate of information from millions of sources. I can't go in and say, well, show me your work, ChatGPT. They're
Right.
just gonna spit something out. And so advisors need to understand, which is kind of how this dives into fiduciary duties, that you
Mm-hmm.
can't just put something in and take something out and expect it to be accurate. I mean, this
Mm-hmm.
isn't ChatGPT is not a vetted product like
Mm-hmm.
eMoney or other basic financial planning software, which is why it's always good to double check everything and not just copy and paste.
Right. Yeah, I can attest to that. I did some testing last year and asked ChatGPT to write my bio, and 3 different times it gave a different college and a different degree for me.
Yep,
And
yep.
none of them were right.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because false information is one thing, but when
Yeah.
you talk about inputting client work into Chat GPT,
Mhm.
you can that doesn't obfuscate or obviate your need to perform as a fiduciary for your clients if you're in that model. And so I think a lot of people think, well, Chat GPT and AI will be a great supplement to
Mhm.
the financial advisor practice. I think that's true, mainly on the communication, maybe on the note taking aspect,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
certainly not replacing the function of here's my goal, here's where I am,
Mhm.
how do I get there?
Yeah.
And ChatGPT is not going to be able to tell you how to get there. And
Right.
even if it does, you should be skeptical because you have no idea how ChatGPT got there.
Right. Speaking of, what about concerns over copyright if you are having it help you write emails or write a video script or, whatever? Do you need to be worried about, are you copywriting somebody else's information and you don't know it?
Yeah, I mean, you very well could be. I mean, I'm not aware of any actions right now
Hmm.
where an advisor or a third party has been accused of copywriting something through ChatGPT. That
Hmm.
being said, there are numerous lawsuits where
Yeah.
OpenAI, the main AI company, or at least
Hmm.
the most well-known one, are getting sued by people like the New York Times and
Hmm.
other content creators because what these AI, models do is they simply input works.
Mm.
Yesterday's New
Hmm.
York Times, and it's
Right.
added to the library of data, and it spits it back out in terms of what it has learned. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, I mean, you should always do. I mean, to the extent you can, if it's not something you generated or wrote, do a plagiarism check or something like that. Um, but it's not as big of a concern as I would be about regulators like Washington State or the SEC or other states
Hmm.
that are going to look at this and say, you can't outsource your work and call it your
Hmm.
own and say this is what's best for my client without actually understanding what went into it.
Right. What would you say are the biggest red flags an advisor should look out for when they're either deciding if they're going to use AI or what AI they're going to use or how they're going to use it?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think there's two main considerations.
Mhm.
First and foremost, obviously this would differ. This would differ based on the size of your firm, but what does your firm say about the use of technology?
Mm.
I mean,
Mhm.
technology is present. It's ever present in firms, even if you're a solo shop or you're one of the big RIAs or a big wirehouse.
Yeah.
So, what does your firm say about technology? What's approved? What's not? I know, like at our law firm, we're not allowed to use ChatGPT. It's
Mm.
blocked
Mhm.
because, as we've known,
Mhm.
there's been several instances where smaller lawyers have, run into run their cases through ChatGPT, put them in briefs, and then judges find out, well, Smith versus Jones is not a real case. So ChatGPT cited this case. It's not a real case, which only goes to show you need to, show your work, check your work.
Right.
But you have to understand what your technology is. And not only would the SEC come after you if you uploaded private client information, but, talk about data breach, talk about personal privacy information, talk about 1,000 investors in California who had their private financial information uploaded into up to an open language model. The litigation risks there are huge. So that's one thing. I mean, push your firms to figure out what technology is appropriate and not. I mean, there's plenty of software platforms that are approved, plenty not. So let's figure out what there is. And then second, I mean, you cannot figure out closely enough that you have to check what ChatGPT sends out to you, whether it's an email to a client, whether it's providing advice, anything like that, because ChatGPT cannot show you its work. So those are my two main red flags: is that accuracy of what you're writing, and then firm approval, because there are so many interesting issues coming out of this that you face. You face so much regulatory burdens on all sides. You face so many risks. And for what? For saving 30 minutes to write an email or to short circuit your fiduciary duty process? I mean, it may not be worth it right now.
Yeah. Okay, that leads me to a question. Who is opening their liability up? How do I word this? Essentially, if I'm an advisor, I use ChatGPT. Who is at risk of getting in trouble? Like broker, dealer, firm. What about my clients? Do I need to worry that they could get sued somehow?
I would say the client's personal information is at stake. The firm has a responsibility to its customers, and yes, the advisor does too. So the client could be harmed, the firm and the advisor could be harmed by, breaching confidentiality. I don't know if this would lead to a Reg SP violation or anything like that, but certainly I don't think many clients would say, sure, upload my private financial situation to this not, password protected or not closed language model and figure out what's going to happen from there. I think not only would they see that as a short circuiting of your duties as an advisor, but it's also like, hey, I didn't want the world to know that last year we've made $600,000 on this trade, or that I had this medical issue that we had $300,000 worth of losses. And so you have to be careful what you put in there for getting out of it. And if it's just for efficiency, I'd say no, that's probably not best. If it's for just basic client communication to save time, sure, go for it, but be wary.
Yeah. For the smaller RIAs, do you offer consulting? Because I know you're like, if your firm doesn't have something, push them to make it. What if it's a very small firm and it's just, an advisor and their associate?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, we definitely can help with developing policies and procedures. And as you know, I mean, policies and procedures are only as good as the following they receive. So you can have the best policies and procedures in the world. I can draft them for you. If we don't train your employees or yourself on how to follow them, they're not going to do much. And to that point, since we're talking about liability and things like that, insurance policies, D&O and E&O. Over the last few years, we've seen a lot of development in terms of coverage for cybersecurity incidents, for data breaches, things like that. That's pretty well established. Your policy is either going to have a rider, an exclusion, or clearly cover it or clearly exclude it or something like that. I would encourage, especially smaller advisors who are interested in AI and interested in new technology, to have those discussions with their carriers about, is my use of AI of technology covered or excluded? Now, my guess, based on my experience, is that most of the use of this won't be touched, it won't be covered. It may even be excluded. But I think as the market builds up, we've seen the SEC and Schwab, for example, require coverage for cybersecurity and data breaches and things like that. I don't think we'll see that same thing anytime soon here. But if you are an active user or wanting to use AI, you really need to figure out, okay, what if something goes haywire here? what's my backstop? Do I have coverage? You
Yeah.
probably won't, but it can't hurt to ask and figure out. I use Bard or I use ChatGPT. Talk to your carrier. What's covered? What's not? Has there been anything out there like that?
That's a great point that I hadn't thought of.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's an interesting one because it's like any new technology, like we saw with
Yep.
cyber breaches. It's going to happen. It'll probably be
Mhm.
excluded, but there's going to be a market for it at some price over time.
Okay, so you can consult prior, which is what we would suggest, right? Protect yourself before you get in trouble. What about if somebody does receive I mean, I don't even know the right term. When if somebody is getting sued and receives a lawsuit?
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point the most important thing an advisor can do. I mean, they may be contacted by the state or the
Mm,
SEC. It may be a normal sweep. It may be a targeted investigation of one firm, but contact your attorney early and often. As soon as
mm,
you receive a request, a subpoena, um, before it gets to the Wells notice stage, before it gets to a point where where more action is going to be taken. Understand what you do,
mhm,
understand what you did, and understand how to get out of it,
mm,
which means contacting an attorney. And there's plenty of us who specialize in this area out there.
mm,
And it's important to understand, what that notice says. It's important to keep up with state and SEC regulatory trends.
mm,
The SEC is pretty good about publishing risk alerts on
mm,
a few times a year, sometimes 3 to 8 times per year. Read those risk alerts, figure
mm.
out what they say. Read the action in March of 2024 where the
Yeah.
SEC fined two advisors, $400,000 total for misleading use of AI,
Ooh.
and figure out, hey, how do I avoid that? If
Yeah.
my if my form ADV, if my documents say I will use technology in X manner, well, make sure you use it in X manner. If
Mm-hmm.
you don't, update your documents.
Mm-hmm. Great advice. Any other last minute thoughts for advisors on AI? And hey, be aware of this.
So my main advice and my main thoughts in the AI space is, like many of us in the financial planning community, I don't think AI or Chat GPT will ever replace
Mhm.
or robotize, I guess you could call it, the advisors. I don't
Yeah.
think that Chat GPT is going to replace a meeting with your financial advisor. I
Mhm.
do think that as advisors use this technology more and more or explore it more and more, they will understand that it's really a tool for efficiency, at
Mm.
least when it comes to client communications, shortening the communication cycle.
Mhm.
Taking a newsletter is a great example.
Mhm.
It may take you 2 hours to write a newsletter. But again, we don't plug in what we want to write in a newsletter, copy and paste it into a newsletter. We
Right.
get bulk content, just like you would get, a bulk piece of granite from wherever. You don't have to
Mm.
create the granite. You do have to chisel it to make it what you want.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I do think there could be more use for it like that. The
Yeah.
client intake process. What are interesting and different questions in those first 4 meetings with new clients that I
Mm.
can use that I haven't thought of before,
Mm.
that I don't have to go research or
Mhm.
go down the Google rabbit hole to figure out. I mean, those are efficiencies that we can use.
Yeah.
You know, if we're trying to find trends in the stock market or what the next cool, great fund is, no, that's not going to be its best use. But
Mm.
like any piece of technology, I mean, you go to the T3 conference, uh,
Mhm.
with Joel Bruckstein, and you do that, there's technology all over the place. There's
Mhm.
approved vetted software, and it's only a matter of time before AI comes in there and may not be approved or vetted, but it's out there. Advisors are using it, which only means the SEC is going to be all over it to
Oh yeah.
pull it and make it more narrow and constrained.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're gonna have a secondary conversation about testimonials.
Yep, yep. I haven't even dove into the marketing role implications or anything like that,
Yeah.
but let's avoid these fake testimonials that you generate from Chat GPT and anything like that.
Oh my, I hope people aren't doing that.
Oh, you'd be surprised, I'm sure.
Scary. Awesome. Thank you so much, Andrew. This was very enlightening. And I'm actually going to go read my uh, general liability thing and see what's protected there with technology.
Sounds good. Yeah, I mean, the great thing about new technologies, there's always more room to explore, and the chances are you personally won't be the first one to receive
Mm,
a lawsuit or SEC action, but heck, read about those people that are, so we can
yeah,
figure it out. And I mean, I think a lot of people think AI is the next new big revolution, just
yeah,
like the internet was of the '90s, and
yeah.
you know, Facebook, Google, whatever you want to call it. So let's see where this goes, and let's see how you can use it. But there's not a worry of AI replacing advisors, but
Mm,
let's be wary of just copying and pasting products and
yeah.
understand. Advisors really need to understand this one point. ChatGPT can't show you its work. You are responsible for vetting the content and accuracy of
Mm,
whatever ChatGPT comes out. There's
hmm.
no off ramp here, just as your compliance officer would say.
Yep. I love that. Great closing note.
Absolutely.
If you're looking for AI free content, make sure to check out our Done For You services, where we are customizing your content to you and your audience, how you would say things, not not a robo advisor or not AI, but you personally. And then join us next Monday to talk about how to maximize the impact of PR and gain more earned media. And if you're curious what earned media is, join the live stream and you'll find out. Until then, have a great week.